is Karim Moussawer. He's one of the visiting critics for this semester. I'm going to read a little bit off of this, just so that we get everything on our transcription. Although I've known him for 15 years, I don't really have to read this, but I will in any case. Karim is the Seif Global Studio Professor this semester. As I said, he's leading a visiting critic studio. He is a graduate of the Beaux-Arts Academy in Beirut, the Lebanese Beaux-Arts Academy in Beirut, and also a graduate of the Southern California Institute of Architecture. That's where I met him many years ago. He did a master's degree there. He worked in Los Angeles for a number of offices for a number of years. His firm, PARALX, won quite a lot of design awards, AIA and other, in Los Angeles. That's how I came to rediscover him and his work. He's now located in Beirut, where he founded his office, PARALX, an architecture and design practice that's currently engaged in projects of different types and scales in the Middle East. He has projects all over. I think some projects in Dubai, some in Jeddah, and some in Saudi Arabia, some in Riyadh, also a number of projects in Beirut. And he's going to show work from the studio tonight and talk about that. PARALX signifies collaborative work. He's won a number of international design awards, which is in just a few short years after it was established, including merit and citations awards from the AIA. Prior to moving to Los Angeles, as I said, he earned his undergraduate degree in Lebanon. Tonight he's going to talk about some projects there and also some projects across the region. Join me in welcoming Karim Moussawer.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. PARALX, as Michael said, parallel practice, work and collaboration. It's based in Beirut, so I'm going to show you what we've been up to lately. These are just the two cities I'm going to be talking about. From physical barrier to virtual enclaves. This is, to go back a little bit in history, Beirut is known for the civil war that occurred for over like 15, 17 years, and during that time it was divided into predominantly Christians living in the east side and mainly Muslim community on the west side. And the first project we're going to talk about is the Beirut Digital District, and it's located by that green line that used to separate the two cities. Basically, the Beirut Digital District is a hub or like a community that started maybe 2010 or 2011. It's to house all the ICT community, startups, firms, anything related to technology is going to go there. They're calling it like the Silicon Valley of Beirut or of Lebanon. What is interesting though, other than after the war, is the post-war division. Basically, we used to have the physical separation, and now it's more of kind of a virtual ghettos or enclaves that were created during the post-war years, and these you don't see any division at all, but you can just feel and see signs of different factions or groups that occupy these territories. So you see also the district is located among one of the hottest of those enclaves. The development in the post-war years were much concentrated on the coastal line and mainly private effort versus any real public work. That's a view from the district looking at downtown and oriented towards the west. When it comes to public spaces, the same thing. There is almost no interest from the government in public spaces, and really the main park there, it's the Pine Park, or the Beirut Pine Park, is basically has been recently renovated by a fund from the French government, and it's closed to public. So another park inside in the west side of the city was renovated and developed by a private company. Now it has a private security and gated, so with like times to go in and out. You know, a major development on the coast. It's like a kind of a waterfront, F&B outlets, and hanging out places. It was also developed by a private company, which it's called Solidaire, which is it's the company that renovated the downtown area after the war. So BDD Master Plan is what we started with. Actually, when we met the client, we inherited a master plan that totally ignored few old structures that were on the site. One of them is an old church from the 1800s, and the other one is an old house, which is like a very traditional in terms of architectural language. So we thought just to add these to the plan and just add kind of a value and just integrate these structures inside the project. And basically, just to relate a little bit to the map that you have seen, this is the green line that we saw. So this is the west, and this is the east side. We generated those masses based on zoning code and based on the grid line we identified. And basically, what one of the main things we're focusing on is the public space and those green areas we're calling piazzas. And on purpose, we didn't want the public space to be just concentrated in one area, but rather it just flows on to the next block and to the block further south. And the idea of this is to create an openness that kind of contradicts with the division that the war have had over the years, and it symbolizes more a sense of a conversion rather than this division. So with these, this is a plan that was supposed to be built by 2022, but with all the actions that's happening around the area in general, it has pushed now pushed back to 2030. So once it's built, it will basically look like that. We emphasize on those open green areas by utilizing the layer on top of the roof, so we can multiply those area and show how important they are for the neighborhood. And once built, it's quite a mix. Mainly, it's going to be like those offices, but it will have a lot of residential that is mainly going to be the tenant of the BDD district, in addition to some hospitality project. Up until this moment, the district was made out of renovated buildings that were retrofitted into office spaces until the 1227, they call it BDD 1227. This is the first ground up project that we're working on. So the first, when the first project started, it started with the north block, and basically it was like an invited competition. This lot is owned by an endowment of the Catholic Church, and the developer of BDD was worried that if these guys will build later, they wouldn't have a control over what they will have looking over the BDD Master Plan. So they went into some kind of a venture where the BDD guys will build these projects, and they will just operate it for some time and split the area in between. So So the challenge really here was how to make a building that looks like it belongs to the master plan, but it has different legal boundaries, which are these. So by code you can't open to your neighbor. You have to step back, and you have some kind of a building envelope that you have to kind of follow. So by taking the building extrusion and the building envelope, we started carving with this in this block and creating this courtyard to legally get the natural light for the offices and creating an access from the side. So this is basically where the master plan is, and this is the north side. And with a series of cutting and carving and introducing some outdoor areas, there's something about the weather. It's kind of pleasant weather over there. You have like kind of almost 300 sunny days per week, so the outdoor area is important. This is how the components of the project are. So it's from the envelope, the solid, the void that was carved out, and the amenities or outdoor areas. The other thing the client wanted to have is to create this office spaces that really respond to what a digital district want to be. So this transparency, encouraging the exchange between those startups. This was an important factor in their decision. Once we got the competition and we started developing the project, we were applying the French fire code as we applied for the permit, and that requires like a 1.2 meters. It's like 4 feet of solid areas between the floors. So the whole transparency idea that we had in the concept was not gonna work really. So we looked at a system that we employ on the facade where we can blur those horizontal boundaries between the floors and kind of give, because this is the first building, as I said, kind of give a look that implies technology advancement and things like that would go well with what BDD is about. So we work on these 3D kind of panels, perforated panels. They also act as sun breakers with their orientation. It depends on which facade they are applied on, and they kind of help reducing the heat gain. That's the mock-up of the panel. So this is basically 12'4", so or 375 centimeter, and this is some experimentation with the density of the opening. And that's the lighting design rendering that we're applying on the facade. We're working with a lighting firm based out of Atlanta in Georgia called Black Body Design. So they did a really good job. That's a view of the South Tower and the North with the church in between. So as we were working on the North Tower, they thought, okay, we want to develop the lot to the south of the church. So we kind of wanted that both buildings speak the same language. And at the same time, there is this intention of having those less static, a little bit more moving, just so they can communicate between each other, overlook the big piazza here, and kind of communicate with the church as well, being like kind of stuck in between. So this is how these buildings will end up looking like, with a series of stacking of the volumes. And once we were in the middle of that project, the church came to us and was like, you know what, since you're doing the whole project, why don't you renovate the church for us? I was like, all right. So that was, it was interesting because this church was there for like long time ago, and it had witnessed like the war years, and obviously it was, pretty destroyed with no roof. But really visiting the church and looking at this image in particular, this was really the inspiration, and being there, looking at, you can see the sky and everything is like, wow, that would be cool to have, this abundant light coming from above. So this is the location of the church in between the building in regard to the whole master plan. This is the other saying by Rumi that was also inspiring. It was like the wound is the place where the light enters you. And we took this idea and we kind of developed it in a way that to create this spiritual space made out of this abundance of light. Conceptually, it's quite straightforward. So this is how the church looks like right now. So we're going to just strip off all the new plaster layer they added in the 50s or 40s, something like that, with a glass roof, the steel structure, and those elements, or we're calling the truncated pyramids. Those truncated pyramids they really symbolize all these bombs that were exploding and throwing all these shrapnel, and as if they were just frozen in time, and instead they were just showering the space with light rather than the destruction. That's a ceiling diagram showing the different component of the ceiling, and that's how the effect would look like from the inside. One aspect of this project was that because the civil war was basically sectarian, and the issue of religion is kind of a taboo in Lebanon. So with the community of BDD, almost like in the 60% younger than 35 years old, most of those people were born after the war. So we are addressing the post-war generation when it comes to the design. We wanted to create a space that is attractive for a younger generation, so they can maybe be interested in at least visiting or looking at what a church or the religion could do for them, rather than just run away because of what they have heard from their parents or what they have read through the history books. So that was one important aspect, to have this church accessible to the younger post-war generation. The other thing is that these really, they look like the ornament found in old Eastern, specifically Eastern church found in that region, but they are just interpreted in a contemporary way. And at the same time, they act as acoustical element for the high ceiling space of, I think, 15 meter. From the outside, the glass roof, when it's lit at night, and this shiny, with its shiny effect, it kind of gives it echoes the rising, or the coming back, or something like that. When it comes to the construction of the project, it got a bit tricky because although the church had accepted to dismantle the building piece by piece, put it on the side, excavate the whole site, and then put it back again, the Department of Culture that is responsible for everything that is heritage and things like that, they did not approve such a step, so they wanted to remain as is. So what we had to do, because having a basement for this building separated from this one would lose a lot of efficiency when it comes to parking spaces. Beirut is super dense, the street grid are very narrow, traffic is horrible, so parking is extremely important. That's why we have 6 floors in the project. So we had to come up with a system to hold the church in place. We had these wader beams supporting the steel structure, holding the walls because they can collapse anytime, and doing the excavation of 6 basement underneath, holding that in place. So this is like as if we are inside the church looking down. This is like the north tower, or the north building, and like hanging the church up in the air and creating this continuity in the basement for an efficient parking system for the project. The third project we're working on in BDD is it's called the T3 Tower. T3 Tower is located right at the edge, at the tip, overlooking downtown, and this is like the most strategic location. So this is the signature building they wanted for the project. it also takes the ideas behind the master plan, the openness, and just deploy it in a vertical way on the building. So the building looks quite transparent, kind of blurring that division between east and west because this is where it's located. One advantage of low-rise development is, being close to common areas, have access to those green spaces. And with our case, we had no choice but going with a high-rise. So we thought that by just doing some stacking and inserting, we can get the same benefit of being in the proximity of those common areas by inserting them vertically in the building, and at the same time gain views and create all the different type of apartments that we want, and even bringing that green space all the way up and giving them not just as public, but also as private green spaces, becoming like a kit of parts that, when you want to get your apartment, you have the option to choose if you want it green or a pool or just a landscape area. So that's just a general section on the building, and that's how programmatically it is. So it has a lot of variety of residential units, and they are all based on the community that will live in BDD. And we looked at Richard Florida and the theory of the creative class when we worked on this project, because this is really what this community is about. And these have completely different needs that the conventional families or the older families, or like our parents or things like that. So the open space is extremely important, the communication with the outside, the size that has dropped. Typically, apartments in that region, they go like really large, so it's no longer the case with these guys. This is like one of the split apartment, and how the green areas, they start to be deployed vertically on the building, and even the horizontal convention of the slab, that we are trying to rethink it by creating those kind of split level. This is one of the project we got an award from the AIA last year. It was last year in the design category. Moving a bit south, we practice also in the Gulf, mainly or mostly in Saudi Arabia, and looking and specifically in Jeddah. So looking at Jeddah as a culture, it's very conservative. Privacy is something of an extreme importance. These are buildings from the old town of Jeddah, and all the facades are just clad by boxes, wooden boxes with tiny little holes, so they make sure they are not going to be seen, but they can see outside. So this is how obsessive the privacy and the conservatism is over there. The first project I want to show you there, it's for the Jeddah Economic Company, which is responsible for developing the tallest tower right now, or until Dubai builds the new Calatrava Tower. So this is basically the city they envision with this phase that is currently, they call it phase 1. This is the Red Sea right here, and our lot is here. This whole area, they call it the financial district. So we got a city block to develop as office building. And what they're trying to do here is that to change that image of conservatism and this obsession with privacy by flexing their muscles and showing that they also can build tall, they also can build cities like their neighbors in the Gulf. So this is more like a statement of intent that these guys are trying to do. This is a recent aerial, so it shows the tower is under construction with the infrastructural work underway, and this is basically where the site is located. We're inspired by the desert rose as a geometric form. And one thing they had in their zoning is basically they don't want to dig for basement for parking, because simply the water table is like really shallow. And so they came up with a podium type of zoning that will house all the parking garages with public spaces on top and the building sitting on that podium. So we really wanted to look at this typology and see if we can innovate or try to make something a bit more interesting than what they had put in their plan, in their master plan. At the same time, they are a city that is promoting itself to being pedestrian friendly, encouraging a lot of pedestrian walkways, wide sidewalks, despite the harsh weather that they have over there. So we started connecting those different levels for pedestrian with using some ramps. And we even shaped the tower and like opening up this way to emphasize on the space there, and showing where those public areas are in relation to that podium. That's how this is the massing study of the building, and the result is a podium that is sloping and taking people around and climbing up and down to reach that main public area. And this is the main corner overlooking the tower, so this is like the main entrance. So we used the podium to create this axis, and where it intersects with the horizontal floor, we have those cafes and like public areas that enhance the project. That's the middle area with the topography of the podium climbing up to reach this central area. Even the skin, so to make the whole thing look kind of homogeneous or uniform, we just used extruded, kind of an extruded monument that act as breakers, sun breakers, and they just shift down, and they even cover the podium itself to make this whole look quite uniform. Another approach on the public spaces in that country is a project we're doing in Dammam. Dammam is a city on the eastern side of the country towards the Gulf. And basically it is, the client wanted to, an office park, so a series of office buildings with various floor plate size, that it's on the major, the ring road and a major highway, very close to one of the biggest malls, or maybe one of the malls, the few malls that they have. So this is where the site is. We looked at different organization and plan, and we were inspired by the idea of the oasis and how this we could create some porous organization with different and unique views for each building, and creating the access for vehicular drop-off or pedestrian access, and looking at how we could drop the public space a little bit to have this effect that you are contained in some kind of a valley like the oasis. And we worked on because the program called for a ground floor of F&Bs, so to encourage the area to be more pedestrian friendly, we worked on the geometry of the building. So by increasing the roof, or making the roof floor plate bigger than the ground floor, we will just decrease the area of where the sun rays can go down, and then the result is a more shaded area in the middle. Adding to that some water features at the entrances where they can cool the air as they go down. So this is like the steps of how you could shape those buildings and create those spaces that are completely shaded. That's how it looks in plans, with a lot of green spaces and the alleys for the pedestrian with all these water feature. And with this section, and this is kind of what we were looking to have, those the oasis / the old traditional way of how they used to do their markets and their souk from the highway. So it's a series of like pyramid-like facade buildings that align on the street. This is another theme that we've been working on, and this is again this obsession with privacy slash luxury, and when you combine both, you can like have something extremely exotic. This is a project for the one of the king's son, and basically during the summer, the king leave the capital Riyadh and they go to stay in Jeddah, which is kind of the beach city. Not that they go to the beach, but so basically a lot of the people travel with the king, be it assistant, ministers, princes. So all these guys, they're kind of a lot of people. So they needed a place to stay during their travel that is completely private, completely secluded, where they can see no one and no one can see them. This is really an obsession. So so we looked at the lot and how we can create those villas with maximum privacy and maximum open spaces. So the circulation is limited to the ends, and where we could maximize the space in between. And taking just a typical a box of what a villa or a house could be, it was split into pieces and then just connected and creating the spaces in between. So as a diagram, this is like the private garage with the service access point, the building blocks above, wrapped around, you know, with some kind of a surface, and introducing landscape with water feature, like and waterfalls, things like that. And in plan, it looks like very like fragmented, like pavilions with you know, the bedrooms, an office space. So when the assistant of that VIP person comes in to sign some document, they are only limited to a very small access. The service comes from downstairs, serve the dining and the space, and then they can just leave. So it's all about not to being seen or they're being felt that they are around. And this is like a view through those blocks. They had two sites and two different typologies. The first one we saw, it's for the like a VIP. This one is for the royal family. So a prince or something like that would come and stay in this one. So it's the same thing. I remember when we were given the brief, we want the most luxurious place to stay. And they want to pay, I don't know how much per square meter to build that project, but they want something completely different. And then, you start putting the effort on things that may seem superficial, but they just respond to a certain culture. And basically, this is the same story with different arrangement. They have two master bedrooms. One is here, they're connected with a bridge. The pool is elevated with like a glass railing that does some kind of a waterfall to go down, and the living room down there with some glass blocks, that you can see the pool from below. Things like that they just translate what the culture needs or what the culture is looking for. Another similar project in terms of theme is the Blue House, but this is privately owned, and it's for a family of a prominent businessman in the city of Jeddah. This is also about extreme privacy. This guy has 5 daughters, so even there's like a bigger layer of privacy because they in the Saudi culture you separate until like very recently, they separate women from men, and having 5 daughters, it's like a big challenge. So, so basically, this is a lot that is in the city. It is almost 11,000 square meters, so that's like 110,000 square foot. And it's just for one family. The built-up area is in the 40,000 square foot. And the way the house is split, basically it has many entrances, service, secondary entrance, the main entrance this way, and a series of courtyards. And these courtyards are service courtyards. So the client wanted to hide anything that is service, so they have 8 bedrooms for drivers underneath here with the main kitchen and the cooks and the security and the guard. So they all share this courtyard. So as you enter, all you see is greenery, and these guys take natural light from the side. This is the service courtyard overlooking down to the domestic helpers' bedrooms. I think there were 4 or 6 right there. And so when you enter, this is how, you know, they are hidden underneath. That's the second ones over here. And so there is this obsession again of being above and hiding the service. When it comes to the main component of the house, there is the men's, they call it the men's villa, but or diwania in Arabic, which is basically the men's salon or men's reception area. And then there's the reception guest for the guest, and then there's the kids wing. So basically, it has a library, gym, a guest bedroom, and like their living room. And it's fine if you see through here because you're not gonna see anything. So all you see is some green, so they're not worried about that transparency. Upstairs, it is basically the kids, so 4 daughters. Actually, the 5th one is married, and that's why there's a guest room. So she comes with her family and stay downstairs. And that's the family living, and that's the master bedroom. The master bedroom is 180 square meter. So basically, the importance of privacy has led to series of courtyards where the house was developed all around, and it's amazing how much you could do to secure this privacy. So all the building facades were related to the issue of privacy. So we had developed a contemporary screen that echoed the old screens we've seen in the previous picture of the city. They called Musharabia, and it's made out of like stainless steel tubes attached to sandstones that was imported from Spain. Jeddah is very humid, so sandstone is really good for the humidity. And this is one of the courtyards with these small openings that give onto the main plaza outside. That's another courtyard they give to the living room. And that's for the family living. So all these series of courtyards to lighten up the space and to make sure they are not going to be seen from the outside. And this is how the section is developed. So this is a service courtyard, this is the family courtyard, and the office sits right there. That's how the building looks like. You're working with a mass and you're trying to just punch it where you really need to. And that's the office overlooking the house. And for me, this picture is interesting because this office looks like it's even protecting that house or those daughters that they have. And the pictures are taken by when using my phone because we were not allowed in the house once it was completed. So it's like you can't go in. We live there. You have to respect our privacy. And plus, we don't want you to copy the design. I think they don't know we have the drawings. Going back to the village of Faraya, we saw in the map of Lebanon, it is the winter sport village, like an hour and a half drive away from the capital. This is like a weekend house for a family of 4 that don't even live in Lebanon. They live in Dubai and they go to spend the summer and the winter, the Christmas vacation, and the mid-year break to go skiing. The area, so the site is right behind those trees right there. So the area is famous for all these rocky formation you see even like further away and even here. So this like monolithic natural bridge, it's actually something interesting to see. And this is something we were inspired by when we took over this house. It's a 600 square meter lot with a 250 built up area. So we took the building envelope and we started like slicing it. I call it shaped by the views. So there's a public garden that's gonna be developed right next door, and we have open views this way, open views towards the mountain right there with a, you know, we'll put a skylight. So as if those side angles, they came and they sliced the building. And basically in terms of program, there's just a couple bedrooms for the kids, the bridge that acts like a kind of a sitting area, reading area, the main bedroom, and the living space that is open on both sides. So during the summer, this is being oriented north. When you open this side and the other, you have a really like naturally ventilated or cooled area. That's this section over the deck and the main space. The client is obsessed with hunting. They go into South Africa and they have a lot of trophies collection. So it was one of the requirements in the interior to have those in there. That's actually not an old view now when you have the snow season over there. Even the texture of the building, we wanted to have this rough effect, and the monolithic look or form, it is inspired by that natural bridge and this rocky formation that's on site. Going back to Jeddah, this is a project we're currently working on, but I thought it's interesting because it also relates to the public space, and I thought to share it with you guys. There's a lack of public space in Saudi Arabia, and right now they just developed the waterfront into a park, and this is like a big thing for the city and a big thing for the citizen. So it's like the only way out to as a breather. Our client, basically through the renovation of the waterfront, the city has identified spots for small little structure that will have F&Bs or some shops. This is the site that we were given. It's called C9, and it's dedicated for commercial use. It is like 1,000 square meter. It's probably the biggest among the whole series of site, and it's opening this way to the sea and this way to the coastal road. So one thing we wanted to make sure is that we didn't want the building to interrupt the park. We wanted to try as much as possible to have it kind of integrated with the park, and with a 5 meter maximum height allowed right there. What we try to do is to push the side to the sea by creating some kind of a low point here and pull the point on this side up, where we could get the maximum exposure for the shops, you know, for the high traffic road on the coast, and where we could engage the public. So the public is very important because they are not used to public spaces. So this is the first park, and it's extremely important for us to take this into consideration as we design. And the building looks like it completes whatever landscape design they had there. And in section, it has this kind of an access point with the shops oriented this way to the road. And it starts to act as an amphitheater where people can just go, climb up, wander around, have a look at, enjoy the sunset view. And this is like, plus 5 meter, the highest point in the park. It could be pleasant just to sit there and hang out. And with the new law of allowing for movie theaters, we thought, why don't we just put an outdoor movie theater? And we presented this to the city, and we were actually surprised. They liked the idea. So now they're going to provide, because this is outside of the property, they're going to provide what we need in terms of poles and stretch fabric and things like that you can dismantle when you're not using, and just have like an outdoor screening, as long as the client doesn't charge for it. That was the requirement. So this is ongoing. And going back to Beirut, DL project is the first project for us in Beirut as a practice, as PARALX. It is located on the eastern or southern, southeastern side of the city, which is a hill, and it overlooks the mountains on that side. It's also close to a lot of important infrastructural elements like a big hospital, a national museum, and a university. This is basically what you see from Beirut, so all these mountains that go down and then just touch the sea. So we wanted to kind of celebrate this uniqueness of the site. So we took the silhouette of those mountains and we kind of projected them on the building and tried to create or animate, if you will, the facade by linking it in a maybe in an emotional way. So and we started to framing those views, but this frame is not really an orthogonal frame. So it is curvy, just like the mountains. So this is all the mountains that are surrounding, and this is basically the city limit is right there, and the hills start and they built up into mountains. These act as at the same time as an extension to the living space. Balconies and terraces are very appreciated in Lebanon because of the nice weather, as I mentioned earlier, and at the same time they act as sunbreakers for these or protection from the sun on these balconies. And it was a very interesting process how to build this. So we had like series of 3D models going to 2D. I think they used the manufacturer, the Fusion, Autodesk Fusion, laser cutting over steel to create the formwork. So it was kind of an interesting process to go through. That's another view looking south. Some of the detail of the tension point, which is also interesting, how the topography starts moving a lot, and then when it reaches the corner, they are more subtle. This is the lobby entrance. Although this is our first project, it has just been completed. Actually, it is, it probably needs a couple of more weeks, but tenants started to move in. So that's the lobby of the building. These are the mailboxes. So we wanted the white to just continue inside. And this is the opening through the hallway of the building right behind, which is dedicated for offices, and it acts as a screen for the residential building. And that's the side of it on the ground floor. And it's what is interesting is to see this building along with its the cityscape. So this is one of the view. This is another. Beirut is a very chaotic built environment. It was built through layers, the layers of the war, the chaos after the war. So you see a lot of really old, degraded buildings with new ones that are very commercial. And it was interesting to see how this would look like in the city. So these are the new neighbors in the neighborhood. So those tenants that have just moved in, and so yeah. I mean, it's evident that our work is has a lot of interest in the built environment and how these different issues, be it political, social, environmental, all of these, how they can shape the architecture and the city. So thank you, and thank you for listening.
Karim, will you take a few questions?
Yeah, I'm happy to take questions. And I'm happy to take followers too. We need fan base in Syracuse.
I see. Question.
For your work in Saudi Arabia, could you talk a little bit about the culture of architectural practice in Saudi? I think it's new for many of us in the audience, and relative to client, designer relationships, processes. I imagine it's a bit different.
Yeah. Well, what's very important in that part of the world is they started really building and when the crisis has hit here. So that's we're talking about 2000, or maybe a couple of years earlier, 2006, 2007, or 2008, where this old wave of construction has been going on, and really there's an obvious lack of education when it comes to the built environment. So things related to environmental friendly don't exist. Things related to style or aesthetics, for them, aesthetics is basically copying the arches and those ornaments or those wooden boxes we've seen and just putting it on a I don't know, on a glass building. So there are like atrocities around the cities, and it is kind of scary. So going there to practice, and when I first went there, actually I was a straight LA Jeddah, and there was like a cultural shock. So trying to explain the importance of design and how design can add value to a real estate investment, not even talking about architecture, it was quite a hassle, but I think they're learning, and thanks to Dubai, because the Saudi looks up to Dubai, so anything happens there, they just want to kind of copy it and bring it to Saudi. And a good example is the Jeddah Tower, the JEC. It is, if you look at the downtown Dubai master plan, it is a copy paste. The tower, the lagoon, the biggest mall, which I forgot to mention, excuse me. So all of these are really a copy, and they were pasted in there. So it is, they are changing now, but it's, you can just count the people that you can really work with and have an exchange of dialogue. So it's quite interesting. Yeah, it's a journey. Yeah.
Thank you. It's so interesting. Places I've never been before. I think more of an observation and idea of context and size of projects, and all this idea of extreme privacy. So how to deal with context? That's a question. One is like I would say private view for the prince, right? So it's completely disconnected from context. And other context is the 5 daughters and the huge area around them that doesn't allow for context to see. And then the huge urban development, right? Which means one voice in large size, right? So what is the context? And I think the last project that you've seen, which is one building, and then you've seen the history and context of all the top-down buildings around, that's the most echoing, how do I relate to it? So I think it's, to me, a topic that is in the work, and I'm interested to hear your point of view.
Yeah, the issue of context, and especially in a place like Saudi, is very interesting, and it's very spread out on all levels, because context can in all of these cases can really mean cultural rather than formal. If you drive through the city of Jeddah or Riyadh or like the Saudi cities, the cityscape looks like 4 to 5 meter walls with like some trees on the street, and everything happens behind. And whatever happens behind is whatever happens in any normal country, but it has to be screened off and walled off. So really the context become more on how those people live, and how they want you or expect you to respect that. And we tried in all of the work to align with this, but at the same time see like kind of glimpses or little holes where we can innovate and try to bring something new on the table. And this is extremely challenging. We've had to like get out of a lot of projects because simply the dialogue was just not, going well. Like we're speaking, completely different language. It's a bit, the case is a bit different when it comes to Lebanon, because Lebanon, the context is well, it's more open, and it has a lot of layers of history, or like even contemporary history that you can deal with, and working on that is a completely different mindset, if you will. So you kind of change hats as you step on the plane, and you travel around these areas. So yeah.
Guess I have one more question. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think one of our first conversations we talked about symmetry and how we provide social relationship between women and men in Saudi Arabia. Now I look at the buildings and designers, I don't think there's one symmetry line, the project, right? So I think it's a huge success, right? And then what does it mean in the kind of social hierarchies in that project?
I think it is, a relationship between the, and I'm sure the relationship between the architect and the client is it's some kind of a really strong engagement, at least temporarily. And if you don't have the minimum understanding between you and your client, I don't think the project can lead anywhere. So luckily, the project we've been working on, and especially the ones that I showed you, are people that, although they want to respect their culture, or at least show to the others that they are respecting the culture, because they are not really mainstream about opening up yet. Is something very crucial for the work, because you can't have a certain philosophy in life and then you contradict yourself when you apply it in practice, and the same for the client. So this is why we were lucky to have those clients, because they are able to understand what design is and what design can bring on to the table, and that's why we try to blur this line, or this symmetry line, as much as possible. I mean, you could see it maybe in that blue house project with this big massive house, but still it is, once you go inside, it's a completely different life. So I think the main thing is the having a client that really understands what you are talking about.
I have a question. Two questions. One, the last project you showed is the first that you did, but is only now being built. So one question is, how many of these projects are under construction or will be built? That's one. The other question is, how do you get projects? Are they competitions? Are they straight commissions?
Well, yeah.
I'm guessing that the answer to the first question is that they're all going to be built. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, all the projects in BDD, like the T3 tower, the ones under construction, these
you
are...
You showed maybe
yeah.
10 things tonight. How many of the 10 will be built?
The villas with the fragmented villas is on hold, because that's the son of the ex-king.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, so I think you got the answer. The office park is under construction.
Yeah.
The blue house is built. The C9 will be built. That little landscape, project in the landscape. The JEC is, the strategy is that they will look for investors. So all these lots in the JEC master plan will have a concept design, and when an interested party come to invest or to buy the property, they buy the property with the design, and they just connect that client with the architect to develop the project further.
But so you've showed 10 projects. How many will?
Maybe 2 or 3 that they are not. Yeah, they are not going to be built.
Oh,
maybe.
So what blows my mind about that is typically when architects show their work, they show 50 projects and maybe one is built, and they show and you very casually just spun through them all as if to say, well, I've just designed these. They're all going to be built. Whatever.
Okay, I should have shown the others.
No. I mean, it's just So how do you get these projects?
It is,
How do you-
it,
because
Yeah.
culture here is more straight commission. I mean, in
Right,
Europe there's
yeah.
more competitions, in Asia more competitions. How
there is
how do you
a
get
lot of
projects?
there is a lot of competition specifically in Lebanon, and I think we were lucky to get the BDD project. We first got to work on a competition of one of those projects, and then we worked on a competition for the tower, which they liked, and then they stopped doing competition. They gave us the church and the master plan, the master plan is ongoing. So not necessarily we will do the architecture of all the buildings, but we are finalizing the master plan. When it comes to Saudi Arabia, where we have, and this is a reason why we were able to keep our office small. We are 5 people, including myself. So is that we have a local office, like a kind of a partnership in Saudi, and they are super active, and we've been working together for quite some time. The fact that we share resources had a lot of benefit on our size to stay small. And the fact that this country was really booming in terms of real estate development, you get access to a lot of opportunities that are going on, and thanks to them at the same time. So they are true partners in that say.
So a lot of those are straight commissions.
Yes. And in Saudi, I think they are all straight commissions. Yeah.
Other questions? Okay, thank you, Karim.
Thank you.